Hey, come on, janitor. Come here, the office manager barked, a smirk on his face. You know we're having a meeting. Now say something. The entire boardroom, filled with the CEO and top investors, chuckled. Everyone expected embarrassment. She was just a janitor after all, invisible, overlooked, nothing special. But what happened next would leave the entire room silent and change her life forever. Greg Thompson stood near the head of the polished mahogany table, his arms crossed, his expensive tie perfectly knotted, his grin widening as he spotted Olivia Parker through the glass doors. She'd been trying to move quietly past the conference room with her cleaning cart, just as she'd done every Tuesday morning for the past 16 months. But today, Greg had noticed her, and something in his expression said he was bored with the presentation, hungry for entertainment at someone else's expense. Come on, don't be shy. Greg's laugh echoed off the marble floors, that particular kind of laugh that made power feel like a weapon. Behind him, the room was packed with the company's most important people. Richard Ellis, the silver-haired CEO with his wire-rimmed glasses and leather portfolio, and the investors who controlled hundreds of millions in capital. Laura Simmons, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, glanced up from her notes with raised eyebrows. David Carter adjusted his Rolex and exchanged a look with Michael Hughes, who was already smirking. Several junior executives pulled out their phones, sensing a moment worth recording. Olivia's hand tightened on her mop handle. Every instinct screamed at her to disappear, to apologize and retreat into the service corridors where people like her belonged. I'm sorry, I'll just... No. Greg walked toward her, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the floor. You heard me. Come in here. Say something. Anything. He turned back to his audience, spreading his arms theatrically. Even the stupidest thing in your head. Just say something. Let's hear what wisdom the cleaning staff has for us. The room rippled with uncomfortable laughter. Some colleagues looked down, but others leaned forward, hungry for the spectacle. This was entertainment, a break from quarterly projections and profit margins. The janitor was about to be humiliated, and everyone knew it. Olivia stood in the doorway now, her navy uniform stark against the opulent boardroom with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Her heart hammered. Everyone was staring. Everyone expected her to stammer, to say something foolish, to confirm their assumptions about who she was and what she was worth. But nobody knew her secret. Nobody knew that the woman in the janitor's uniform had once presented facility management strategies to executives in Toronto boardrooms. Nobody knew about the degree from Ryerson University or the advanced certification in facilities management. Nobody knew she'd spent 16 months observing every inefficiency in this building while everyone looked right through her. Greg's smirk grew wider. Well, we're all waiting. Something shifted inside Olivia. 16 months of being invisible. 16 months of biting her tongue while watching operational disasters unfold. 16 months of preparing for a moment she never thought would come. This is it, she thought. Now or never. Okay, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. I'll say something. Before we continue with what happened next in that boardroom, I want to ask you something. If you believe in courage, in the power of knowledge, and in never judging someone by their uniform, hit that subscribe button right now. We share stories of people who refused to stay silent, who turned their moment of challenge into triumph. Because what Olivia does next is going to shock everyone in that room. Now let's get back to that meeting. The company was called Apex Property Holdings, and in the world of commercial real estate, it was a powerhouse. Managing a portfolio worth over $3 billion across office towers, luxury residential complexes, and mixed-use developments in major U.S. cities. Apex didn't just manage properties, it defined markets. Their Manhattan headquarters occupied 4 floors of prime real estate, all glass and steel and the scent of success. Richard Ellis had built the company from a single office building in 1987 into this empire. Now 63, with decades of deal-making etched into his sharp features, he was known for 2 things: an instinct for undervalued properties and zero tolerance for inefficiency. This quarterly investor meeting was sacred ground, where partnerships worth hundreds of millions were forged or broken, where the future of entire developments hung in the balance. Today's meeting was critical. Apex was pitching a revolutionary property management system to a consortium of investors representing a $500 million portfolio. Greg Thompson had spent 2 months preparing his presentation. His career riding on impressing Laura Simmons, David Carter, and Michael Hughes. His promotion to VP depended on this going perfectly. And then the janitor walked by at exactly the wrong moment, and Greg saw an opportunity he couldn't resist. A chance to break the tension with some impromptu comedy. A chance to remind everyone in the room who mattered and who didn't. What Greg didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that Olivia Parker had been studying their operation with the trained eye of a facilities management expert. While they obsessed over PowerPoints and profit projections, she'd been watching how the building actually worked, cataloging every flaw, every waste, every missed opportunity. Olivia's story hadn't started in a janitor's uniform. It started in a Toronto lecture hall where a brilliant young woman from a middle-class family sat front row in advanced property management, her notebook filled with detailed analysis. She'd earned her Bachelor of Commerce in Property Management on academic merit, graduating summa cum laude. Her professors called her exceptional. Her internship at Brookfield Properties made her a rising star. By 25, she had her degree and was working toward her Certified Facility Manager designation, specializing in large-scale commercial operations. She could read a building like a doctor reads an X-ray. Give her an hour walking through a property, and she could identify energy inefficiencies, predict equipment failures, and design operational improvements that would save hundreds of thousands annually. The plan was simple. Work in Toronto for 5 years, build an impressive resume, then return to the US and revolutionize property management. But life rewrites plans without permission. Her father's sudden death left her mother drowning in medical debt. Her younger brother needed tuition for college. The family home was weeks from foreclosure. Olivia flew home to help, planning to stay a few months. She needed immediate income, something flexible while she sorted out the chaos. The janitorial position at Apex Property Holdings wasn't what she'd envisioned, but it paid, and the night shifts left her days free to handle family emergencies. It was temporary, she told herself, just until things stabilized. Except months became a year, and debt is a slow-healing wound. Her Canadian credentials weren't immediately recognized in the US system, and recertification required time and money she didn't have. The job offers she pursued fell through. Her savings evaporated. The temporary position became indefinite. So Olivia Parker pushed her cleaning cart through Apex's headquarters, wearing the invisible cloak that service workers wear in corporate America. People talked over her, around her, through her. She became part of the furniture, as unnoticed as the air conditioning vents or fire extinguishers. But she never stopped watching, never stopped learning. She noticed the building automation system running at full capacity even on holidays. She observed the HVAC inefficiencies costing tens of thousands monthly. She saw the space utilization problems, the maintenance issues being covered up instead of fixed, the operational costs running 15% above industry standard. Every inefficiency was a puzzle piece, and Olivia was very, very good at puzzles. She dreamed sometimes of speaking up, of explaining that the chronic plumbing issues weren't old pipes but incorrect water pressure settings, of mentioning that the energy costs were high because the building systems were poorly programmed. But who would listen to a janitor? Until Greg Thompson gave her no choice. Olivia stepped fully into the boardroom. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a starting gun. The room was more intimidating up close. The massive table, the leather chairs, the presentation screen showing Greg's slide titled Operational Excellence. Q4 Strategy. The investors sat like judges, portfolios open, expressions ranging from amused to curious. Greg stood near Richard Ellis, arms crossed, that smirk broadcasting his certainty that this would be entertaining. "All right then," he said, his tone dripping with false encouragement. "The floor is yours. Tell us about operational excellence." Whispers rippled through the room. A colleague near the back, "Jennifer something?" Olivia remembered cleaning her office, leaned toward another analyst and whispered loudly enough for others to hear, "Oh my God, this is going to be painful." Several people tried to hide smiles. Laura Simmons set down her pen and leaned back, one eyebrow arched. David Carter exchanged a glance with Michael Hughes that clearly said, "This should be good." Richard Ellis said nothing, but his eyes tracked Olivia with the focus of a man who'd built an empire by reading people in split seconds. Olivia's heart was a war drum. Her palms were damp. Every survival instinct told her to apologize, to retreat, to disappear back into invisibility where it was safe. But something deeper pushed back. 16 months of silence. 16 months of watching this company hemorrhage money through operational incompetence. 16 months of having knowledge that nobody wanted to hear. They asked me to speak, she thought, so I'm going to speak. You want me to talk about operational excellence? Olivia asked, her voice finding strength she didn't know she had. That's what I said. Greg's smirk widened. Surprise us. Okay. Olivia moved toward the table, leaving her cart in the hallway. Several people shifted uncomfortably as she approached. She was crossing a boundary, entering space where janitors didn't belong. Where should I start? With the fact that this building's operating costs are running approximately 16% above industry standard for Class A commercial real estate? Or with the 9 critical maintenance issues that are being covered up with cosmetic fixes? Greg's smirk flickered like a light bulb before it dies. Michael Hughes sat forward slightly, his casual posture sharpening. Olivia continued, confidence building with each word. Or maybe I should start with your presentation, slide there. The operational excellence strategy? She gestured toward the screen. Because those projected savings? They're fantasy. They're based on outdated efficiency models that don't account for your actual building systems. Excuse me? Greg's voice had an edge now. What exactly are you? Let her speak. Richard Ellis's voice cut through the room like a knife through butter. He leaned forward, his full attention locked on Olivia. Continue. Olivia's eyes met the CEO's. She saw something unexpected. Genuine curiosity. Don't stop now, she told herself. You jumped. Now fly. This building has a gross floor area of approximately 300,000 square feet across 32 floors. Olivia began, her mind shifting into the mode she'd mastered in Toronto boardrooms years ago. Your current operational cost per square foot is running at $13.20 annually. For a building of this caliber in Manhattan, you should be closer to $11.50. That's a difference of $510,000 annually being lost to inefficiency. The room went completely silent. Jennifer's mouth had fallen open. David Carter was no longer smiling. Laura Simmons pulled out her tablet and started typing rapidly. Greg found his voice, but it lacked its earlier confidence. You can't possibly know those numbers. I clean the facilities management office every Tuesday and Thursday evening, Olivia said simply. The cost reports are usually on the desk. I read them. I have an excellent memory and I understand what they mean. A sharp, surprised laugh escaped from Laura Simmons before she caught herself and covered it with a professional cough. Richard Ellis hadn't moved, but something in his expression had shifted. Go on, he said quietly, and it sounded like an order. Olivia took a breath. This was the point of no return. Your biggest issue is the building automation system. You're running a 14-year-old BAS that's never been properly updated. It's running your HVAC at full capacity during off-peak hours. Nights, weekends, holidays when half the building is empty. I've calculated you're spending approximately $74,000 annually just on unnecessary climate control for vacant space. She moved closer to the presentation screen, pointing without touching. Your slide shows an 8% reduction in utility costs last quarter. But that reduction happened because last quarter had unusually mild weather. When you normalize for climate patterns, your energy consumption actually increased by 3% year over year. Greg looked like he'd been slapped. That's not we specifically. It is accurate, Olivia said, turning to face him directly. Your facilities team knows it. They haven't wanted to mention it because fixing it would require admitting that the BAS upgrade approved 18 months ago was inadequate. New controllers were installed, but the core system architecture wasn't replaced. It's like putting new tires on a car with a failing transmission. David Carter was writing notes now, his casual smirk replaced by intense focus. Michael Hughes had pulled out his phone and was pulling up something, probably cost analyses. Richard Ellis stood slowly. The movement commanded every eye in the room. He walked around the table until he stood a few feet from Olivia, his hands clasped behind his back. "You mentioned 9 critical maintenance issues," he said. "Name them." Olivia's pulse raced, but her mind was crystal clear. This was what she'd trained for. This was what she was born to do. 1. Your cooling tower on the roof has a failing motor bearing. You can hear the vibration if you're up there early morning. In approximately 4 months, that motor will seize. Emergency summer repairs will cost around $80,000 and leave tenants without air conditioning for up to a week. Replace the bearing now during scheduled maintenance. $6,000. Richard's expression didn't change, but he turned slightly toward Greg. "Is this accurate?" Greg opened his mouth, closed it. "I would need to check with." 2. Olivia continued. "Your domestic water pressure regulators haven't been calibrated in over 2 years. Upper floor water pressure exceeds 85 psi. Recommended maximum is 75. High pressure accelerates fixture failure and pipe degradation. You've probably seen increased plumbing service calls from floors 25 and above." Jennifer, who'd been silent this entire time, whispered to herself, "We have been getting those calls constantly." 3. Your elevator maintenance schedule is structured wrong. You're doing preventive maintenance during peak hours, because that's when your contractor has crew availability. But every time an elevator goes down between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., you're creating tenant dissatisfaction and reducing building capacity. Renegotiate for overnight or weekend maintenance. The premium cost is worth it for tenant retention. Laura Simmons was nodding slowly, making additional notes. 4. The waterproofing on your 8th floor mechanical room is compromised. There's a slow leak into the interstitial space between floors 7 and 8. You see it as occasional ceiling stains that maintenance paints over. But there's water damage accumulating in that space, and probably mold starting to develop. Fix it now for $15,000. Wait another year and you're looking at $60,000 in remediation plus potential tenant health complaints. Richard had pulled out his phone and was typing rapidly, likely sending messages to his facilities director. 5. Your parking garage has a drainage problem on sublevel 3. Water pools near the northwest corner after heavy rain. The waterproofing membrane is intact, so maintenance assumes it's fine. But that standing water accelerates concrete degradation. In 2 to 3 years, you'll be looking at structural repairs. Install proper drainage now for $25,000. Wait and it's $200,000 later. 6. Your grease trap servicing for the food court isn't aligned with actual usage. You service quarterly, but based on the foot traffic and restaurant types, you need bi-monthly minimum. Otherwise, you risk backups that send sewage into the ground floor public areas. Trust me, you don't want that publicity. Michael Hughes made a disgusted face. 7. Your space utilization is inefficient. The 4th floor has 18% vacancy, while the 3rd floor is overcrowded to the point where you're losing potential tenants because of perceived lack of space. Spatial reorganization could increase your net operating income by approximately $40 per square foot annually on the 4th floor alone. That's around $100,000 in recoverable revenue. Olivia paused, then continued. 8. Your emergency generator hasn't been load tested in over a year. You're running monthly no-load tests, which meet minimum requirements but don't reveal actual performance issues. In a real emergency, there's a significant chance of failure. Proper load test costs $8,000. Losing power during a Manhattan emergency? Immeasurable damage to reputation and potential lawsuits. And 9, she said, your vendor contracts are structured poorly. You're using multiple contractors for services that could be consolidated, which means you're paying premium rates instead of leveraging volume discounts. A comprehensive vendor analysis and contract renegotiation could save approximately $90,000 annually. The room was so silent that Olivia could hear the hum of the projector, the distant sound of traffic 32 floors below, the breathing of 30 people who'd forgotten how to speak. Laura Simmons broke the silence. Her British accent cut through the room with precision. Young woman, what exactly is your educational background? Olivia met her eyes. Bachelor of Commerce in Property Management from Ryerson University in Toronto. Additional advanced certification in Facilities Management through IFMA. Specialization in large-scale commercial property operations. 4 years of combined academic and internship experience with Brookfield Properties managing Class A office towers. Then what in God's name are you doing mopping floors? Laura's question wasn't unkind. It was genuinely baffled. Life circumstances, Olivia said simply. I needed immediate income. This was available. David Carter leaned forward, his earlier smugness completely gone. How do you know all these details about our building? I've worked here for 16 months, Olivia said. I have access to every floor, every mechanical room, every utility space. I observe. I listen. I pay attention. She paused, then looked directly at Greg. And unlike some people, I didn't stop learning just because I wasn't sitting in a corner office. The subtle burn landed perfectly. Several people winced. Greg's face had gone from red to pale. Richard Ellis was staring at Olivia with an expression she couldn't quite read. Then slowly, deliberately, he began to clap. The sound was sharp and startling in the silent room. Greg, Richard said, not looking away from Olivia. How long have you been heading our operational efficiency initiative? 8 months, sir, with a full team of. And how much have you actually saved us? Greg swallowed hard. The projections indicate. Projections. Richard's tone made it clear what he thought of projections. He turned to the investors. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this interruption to our scheduled meeting, but I believe we've just witnessed something extraordinary. He looked back at Olivia. What's your name? Olivia Parker. Olivia Parker. Richard repeated it like he was committing it to memory, like he was already writing the story he'd tell about this moment. I'm going to ask you something directly. Can you fix these problems? Olivia didn't hesitate. Yes. How long? 5 months to address critical repairs and system upgrades. Another 7 months for space optimization and full operational restructuring. 12 months total to optimal efficiency. Cost. Olivia's mind calculated, pulling from years of training and experience. Initial capital investment approximately $400,000 for repairs and critical system upgrades. But annual operational savings would exceed $550,000, plus elimination of catastrophic failure risk. ROI in under 9 months, then pure savings. Michael Hughes was nodding appreciatively. That's exceptional math. Richard looked at Greg. Did you know any of this? Greg's mouth opened but no words came out. He looked at his presentation on the screen, at the carefully crafted slides that had suddenly become worthless. We were focused on the strategic level, the broader. You were focused on looking good in presentations while the building deteriorated around you. Richard's voice wasn't loud, but it cut deep. He turned back to Olivia. I'm pausing this meeting. Olivia, I need you in my office in 20 minutes. It wasn't a question. It was a summons that would change everything. Yes, sir. Excellent. Richard turned to the investors. Laura, David, Michael, I hope you'll forgive the unorthodox nature of this meeting, but I think we've just discovered something more valuable than any presentation could demonstrate. We've discovered that we don't know our own operations as well as we thought. He paused. Give me 45 minutes. When we reconvene, I promise you'll see something worth your investment. The investors stood, gathering their materials, but they weren't offended. Olivia could see it in their expressions. They were impressed, possibly even excited. As people filed out, Laura stopped beside Olivia. That was remarkable, she said quietly. Don't let them waste you. The room emptied until only Olivia and Greg remained. He sat in his chair, staring at the table, looking somehow smaller than before. As Olivia moved toward the door, he finally spoke. I didn't know, he said. His voice was hollow. About your background. About any of it. Olivia paused at the threshold. She could be cruel here, could drive the knife deeper, But she found she didn't want that satisfaction. "You never asked," she said simply. She left him there, alone with his shattered assumptions and expensive tie. 20 minutes later, Olivia sat in Richard Ellis's corner office on the top floor, Manhattan spreading out below like a glittering promise. She'd cleaned this office dozens of times but never sat in one of these leather chairs. Her uniform felt absurd in this space of power and privilege. Richard entered, closing the door. He'd removed his suit jacket. He poured himself a scotch from a crystal decanter and stood by the window for a long moment. "My grandfather cleaned office buildings," he said finally. 1950s, new immigrant from Ireland, barely spoke English. Cleaning was the only work available. He saved every penny for 7 years to buy his first property. A tiny apartment building everyone said was worthless. He fixed it up, made it profitable, bought another. By the time my father was in high school, they owned 8 buildings. Richard turned to face her. "My grandfather used to say that the people who clean a building know it better than anyone. They see the truth when nobody's performing." He sat across from Olivia, his expression serious. "I forgot that lesson. Got too big, too focused on presentations and board meetings. Started seeing buildings as spreadsheets instead of physical structures that need real expertise." He leaned forward. "Greg isn't malicious. He's just an MBA who thinks management is about metrics and slides. He doesn't understand that you can't optimize what you don't truly comprehend." Richard's gaze was direct, unwavering. "Olivia, I won't insult you by asking if you want to keep cleaning floors. The question is, what do you want?" Olivia's pulse quickened. 20 minutes ago she'd been pushing a mop. Now the CEO of a $3 billion company was asking about her dreams. "I want to do the work I trained for," she said. "I want to fix buildings, make them efficient and sustainable and profitable. I want to use what I know." "You want to be a facilities director," Richard said. "More than that, I want to lead operations." Richard smiled. "Here's what I'm proposing. We need a complete operational overhaul. Not just this building but our entire portfolio. 26 properties across 7 cities. I need someone who can analyze these buildings the way you just analyzed ours. Someone who can identify the waste, the hidden costs, the disasters waiting to happen." He paused. "I need a managing director of operations." Olivia's breath caught. "That's an executive position." "It is." "C-suite. Salary to match, we're talking 280,000 base plus performance bonuses. Full benefits, company car, stock options. You'd have a team of facility managers and engineers reporting to you. Full authority to make the changes you deem necessary. Your job would be making our buildings outperform every competitor in the market." "This morning I was mopping floors," Olivia said, almost laughing at the absurdity. People will say whatever they say. I don't care." Richard's voice was firm. "I care about competence, vision, results. You've been paying attention while everyone else was sleepwalking. That's exactly who I need." He extended his hand. "So what do you say, Miss Parker? Ready to stop cleaning buildings and start running them?" Olivia looked at his hand. 16 months ago she'd been at her mother's bedside, holding her hand, making promises about taking care of the family. 6 months before that she'd been walking across a convocation stage in Toronto, the future bright and certain. Now, impossibly, those two paths were converging. She stood and shook Richard's hand firmly. "Yes, I'm ready. Perfect. HR will have paperwork ready by end of day. You start Monday." He smiled. "Take the rest of the week off. Buy some suits. You're going to need them." News spread through Apex like wildfire through dry grass. By noon, everyone knew. The janitor had been promoted to managing director. Not manager. Not senior director. C-suite executive, same level as the CFO. Some people celebrated. Jennifer sent Olivia a text. "You're my hero. Seriously. Best thing I've ever witnessed." Some were confused, struggling to reconcile the woman who'd emptied their trash bins with an executive who'd command their respect. And some, like the colleagues who'd smirked in the boardroom, were deeply embarrassed that they'd underestimated someone so completely. But everyone was talking about Greg Thompson. Greg spent the rest of that day in a daze. The investor meeting had been salvaged. Richard had presented Olivia's analysis himself, and the investors had been so impressed they'd increased their commitment by 20% on the spot. But Greg's role had been fundamentally redefined. Not fired, but repositioned to business development, where his MBA and relationship skills would be more valuable. It was technically a lateral move, but everyone understood the truth. Greg had been demoted in everything but title, and he would now report in part to Olivia Parker. Olivia's first day as managing director was surreal. She arrived at 6:45 a.m. Monday, wearing a tailored charcoal suit she'd bought over the weekend, her old university portfolio bag on her shoulder. Security did a double take. "Ms. Parker, congratulations," and directed her to the executive floor. Her new office was 4 doors from Richard's. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a standing desk, wall of bookshelves. On the desk sat a nameplate, Olivia Parker, Managing Director, Operations. She stood there for a moment, breathing it in, feeling the weight and promise of it. Then she got to work. Her first month was a hurricane. She met with facilities teams for every property, reviewed years of maintenance logs, analyzed cost structures, conducted site visits across 3 states. She was professional, thorough, and relentless. She found inefficiencies everywhere, not because the teams were incompetent, but because they'd been understaffed and underfunded so long they'd learned to treat problems as permanent. Olivia changed that. She presented Richard with a comprehensive operational plan and budget. He approved it the same day. Within 6 weeks, the cooling tower bearing was replaced. Water pressure regulators were calibrated. The 8th floor leak was fixed. The water damage remediated. The mold removed. Elevator maintenance was rescheduled. Parking garage drainage was addressed. The generator was properly load tested. Vendor contracts were renegotiated. The buildings started running better. Tenant satisfaction surveys showed immediate improvement. Operating costs dropped exactly as Olivia had predicted. And everyone noticed. It was 2 months into Olivia's tenure when the moment arrived that she'd been both dreading and anticipating. Her assistant knocked softly. "Ms. Parker? Mr. Thompson is here for his quarterly review." Olivia looked up from her tablet. "Send him in." Greg entered, looking somehow smaller in her office than he'd been in the boardroom. He'd lost weight. There were shadows under his eyes. He stood awkwardly near the door until Olivia gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Have a seat, Greg." He sat. The role reversal was complete, stark, undeniable. 2 months ago he'd been the one with power, the one mocking her in front of the company's most important people. Now he was the one seeking approval, waiting for direction. "How's business development treating you?" Olivia asked, her tone professional but not unkind. "Good. Busy. We're pursuing some healthcare sector clients." He shifted in his seat. "I wanted to update you on tenant retention numbers. Since you implemented the new systems, renewals are up 23%. We're getting referrals now, which hasn't happened in years." Olivia nodded. "That's excellent. Have you coordinated with Lisa in property management to capitalize on that momentum?" "Yes. We're developing a campaign to highlight our operational improvements." "Good. Make sure the messaging emphasizes reliability and tenant satisfaction, not just cost savings. People want to know we care about their experience, not just efficiency metrics." "Right. I'll adjust the messaging." Greg made notes on his tablet. Then he paused, the tablet lowering. "Olivia, he stopped, started again. "I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just the awkward nod I gave you in the hallway last month." Olivia waited. "What I did in that boardroom was cruel," Greg continued, his voice steady but clearly difficult. "I made assumptions about you based on your uniform. I treated you like entertainment, like you didn't matter. I didn't see you as a person with a story, with qualifications, with value." He met her eyes. "I was wrong. I'm sorry." Olivia studied him. She'd imagined this conversation dozens of times, rehearsed various responses. But now that it was happening, she found she didn't want to perform any of those scripts. I accept your apology, she said. But Greg, you need to understand something. What happened to me could happen to anyone here. The receptionist downstairs has a degree in architecture. The guy in the mailroom was an engineer before an injury changed his options. Everyone has a story. Everyone has value. She leaned forward slightly. If you only respect people with titles and corner offices, you're going to miss extraordinary talent. Greg nodded slowly. You're right. I'm trying to do better. It's humbling, realizing how much you miss when you think you're seeing everything. Good, Olivia said, because I need you to do better. You're talented at relationship building and market analysis. Those are real skills, but you can't lead effectively if you don't respect everyone in the organization, from the CEO to the custodial staff. We're all making this company work. I understand. Olivia stood, extending her hand. Then let's move forward. I need someone strong in business development to help leverage these operational improvements. Can you do that? Greg stood and shook her hand firmly. Yes, and thank you. After he left, Olivia sat back and allowed herself a small smile. Not because she'd enjoyed his discomfort. She genuinely hadn't. But because respect had replaced mockery. Because competence had replaced assumptions. The power hadn't shifted through humiliation but through undeniable value. 6 months into her tenure, Olivia stood on stage at the Commercial Real Estate Excellence Awards in a Midtown Manhattan ballroom, photographers capturing the moment as she accepted the Operational Innovation Award on behalf of Apex Property Holdings. The company's turnaround had caught the industry's attention, operating costs down 19%, tenant satisfaction up 31%, the highest retention rate in company history. In the audience, Greg Thompson clapped genuinely. He'd helped with the award application, highlighting the operational improvements in his business development pitches. He was learning, slowly, to see value in people he'd once overlooked. Richard Ellis stood at the back of the ballroom, watching Olivia give her acceptance speech. He thought about his grandfather with the mop and the dream. He thought about how easy it was to forget fundamentals when success made you comfortable. And he thought about how lucky they'd been that Greg had decided to mock the janitor that day, because it had revealed treasure hiding in plain sight. 1 year after her promotion, Olivia stood in Apex's headquarters lobby at 6:30 a.m., watching the morning shift arrive. Maintenance crews, custodial staff, early administrative team. She made it a point to be visible during shift changes, learning names, asking questions, listening. Morning, Ms. Parker, called Marcus, one of the maintenance techs. Finished that HVAC inspection you requested on floor 18. Found exactly what you predicted. Corroded actuators. Perfect. Send me the documentation and we'll get it scheduled. Olivia smiled. How's your daughter? Started college, right? She did. Engineering at State. Thanks for asking. As Marcus headed to the service elevator, Olivia noticed a young woman in a custodial uniform struggling with a stuck wheel on her cleaning cart. Olivia walked over. That lock mechanism gets stuck, she said, crouching to examine it. There's a lever here, see? She flipped it and the wheel spun freely. Should be better now. The woman looked startled that an executive had noticed her. Thank you, ma'am. You're the one who who worked. Who used to push a cart just like that one? Yes. Olivia stood. What's your name? Rachel. Nice to meet you, Rachel. You notice anything about the buildings that seems wrong? Inefficiencies, strange patterns, things that don't make sense. Rachel blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Well, there's this weird humming in the mechanical room on floor 14, like a pulsing sound. It's probably nothing. It's probably something, Olivia said. Email me the details. Even if it's nothing, I'd rather check. She pulled out a business card. This is my direct email. Use it. Rachel took the card like it was precious. Really? Really? You're in these buildings every day, Rachel. You see things others miss. That's valuable. Olivia smiled. Never think your observations don't matter. As Rachel walked away, clearly stunned, Olivia finished her coffee and headed to the elevator. She had a 7:15 meeting with the CFO about capital allocations, a site visit to their Boston property, then a presentation to the board about expanding her operational model internationally. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Q4 numbers just finalized. Operating costs down 21%. Tenant renewals at 96%. Highest in company history. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Olivia smiled and typed back. Just paying attention. Amazing what you see when you actually look. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, straightened her suit jacket, and watched the lobby recede as she ascended. Through the glass walls, she could see the building coming alive. Lights flickering on, people arriving, the complex machinery of commercial real estate beginning another day. She knew this building intimately, not just from her year as managing director, but from 16 months of pushing a cart through its corridors, cleaning its offices, being invisible. Those months hadn't been wasted. They'd been the most valuable education she could have received. Because Olivia Parker understood something many executives never learned. A building isn't spreadsheets and PowerPoints. It's a living, breathing system, and everyone who keeps it running, from the CEO to the custodial staff, is essential. Respect that system. Value every contributor. Listen to voices that speak from unexpected places. That was the lesson of the boardroom that went silent. That was the lesson Olivia carried every single day. And in a supply closet 3 floors below, where Olivia had once stored her cleaning cart, Rachel sat during her break and stared at the business card in her hands. She thought about the humming in the mechanical room, wondered if an executive would really read an email from a janitor. Then she remembered Olivia's words. Your observations matter. Rachel pulled out her phone and began to type. Somewhere in the building, a new story was beginning. And this time, someone would be listening. Because Olivia Parker, who'd once been invisible, had made absolutely certain of that.